morning and welcome to a bunch of retired philosophy students talking about Thomas Hobbes. I'm RaduHobbes and I'm an integrative studies major at UNT.
My name is Anthony Zavala and I'm a criminal justice major at the University of North Texas.
I'm Kat Holtz, I'm a junior and I'm a philosophy German, I fucked that up. Psychology German double major, philosophy minor.
My name is Luis Ledesma and I'm a junior at UNT and I'm majoring in engineering. And today we'll be talking about Thomas Hobbes. Thomas has a main idea throughout most of his philosophy of self, which is pretty much that we are complicated organic machines and that we are very self-interested. Thomas Hobbes best said it himself, that we are, and the voluntary acts of each man, the object is in some good to himself. Basically what that means is that no matter what you do, any action that you take is purely in your self-interest, no matter what you're doing, even if you're helping somebody out. It's always going to be in your self-interest.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like going back to that example we had in class about how the child at the bar and how she wanted to enjoy her beer.
Yeah.
But, everyone would be like, oh, she's worried about this child, that's her motherly instinct taking over, and she's actually just trying to enjoy her beer.
Right.
And so Thomas Hobbes also says, we have reason, but reason is just a tool for our self-interest and to make sure what we're doing is actually in line with our best self-interest.
Helps us achieve those goals.
It helps us achieve the goals and also make sure that we're in line with what we would classify as good or morally apprehensible or something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That being said, though, I would say that being self-interested doesn't necessarily mean you're inherently evil, because just like that same example, she's technically still helping out the baby, so there's good coming out of that as well. She's helping out the baby, and then
also with that, none of that is purely just a hedonistic experience.
Right.
So there's some good to all parties, whether or not the situation should have arisen in the first place.
Yeah, there's a give and take. There's no
just
be all end all, and just one person benefiting right off the bat.
Yeah, so Hobbes isn't the kind of person who would say it's the thought that counts. He thinks the thought is bad.
Yeah.
But speaking of morals, he thinks that they're subjective based on our pleasures and displeasures. And so they're subjective based on every man. As he says himself, good and evil are names that signify our appetites and aversions, which in different tempers, customs, and doctrines of men are different. He says that the only way we can have a consistent moral system is under the structure of government, when we are all forced to agree for the sake of our self-interest.
Yeah, and to briefly touch on the subject of the social contract theory. Basically, what it states is that in the basic state of nature, if there's no authority at all, it's going to be just purely anarchy. Everybody's for themselves in the way that every man can die. Basically, someone help me out.
Crap.
The social contract is just saying that
basically you give up freedom.
Yeah, you give up freedoms for a certain level of safety in the back. In the back of your mind, you get you gave up something, but it was still in your best self-interest. You have that security in the back of your mind that people aren't going to be hedonistic and act viciously in the streets.
And he says this is one of our voluntary acts, which of course the object is some good to ourselves. If we're not worried about someone killing us, then we can better act in our own self-interests.
Absolutely.
In that way, similar, in function conceptually rather than actual function, it's similar to a bit like the Patriot Act after 2011, where individuals gave up their some of their personal freedom in terms of security online and such.
Definitely.
So, national security agency, CIA, FBI, those types of agencies could watch, but you do relinquish some of your privacy in doing so, and it kind of has some pertinence to what Hobbes is saying by giving that up.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
that would work as a weakness towards it.
Yeah. So strengths and weaknesses. Since his view of the self is physically based, he doesn't necessarily believe in a soul of any sort, whether immaterial or elsewise. And because of this, he doesn't have to have a long, like, drawn-out explanation with a lot of contradictions, like we saw with other philosophers such as Plato. He has to go on these, like, long arguments about, like, why is the soul immortal? Like, how can we prove this? How can we know it for sure? Hobbes doesn't have to do that, really. And that helps him a lot. It's good strength.
Yeah, being an empiricist, like, he's, like, is super, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's super easy to grasp for, like, the everyday philosopher, should I say? Does that make sense? Yeah. Like, philosophy for people who don't have time to think for hours and hours and lay in bed.
For the layman.
Yeah, it's just like a factual, like, state. Like, he basically states it, and that's what it is. Like, there's no, like, arguing against it.
Yeah, and it's so funny because, like, if you were to put his argument, or any other philosopher in front of him, he would just continue to disprove them over and over again, just being like, no, you can't prove that. Like, where's the evidence?
His almost breaks down to sort of almost an analytical side point where it's just the breaking down of not so much the recognition of the pieces, but just inventory thereof.
Yeah.
So that's in some capacity a strength of it.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going off on a little tangent there. It's still a strength because a lot of people can grasp it, and without this clouded doubt of a self, like an idea of self, you're able to then once again act in self-interest, and that's why. And that's the biggest strength about it.
Like, it's kind of hard to counter, like, doing anything in self-interest, like not doing anything without self-interest, whenever you can easily just counteract everything just by basically saying, but you did that because of this.
Right.
Exactly.
That's like a cause and effect type of thing.
It's like, oh, but you gave your friend $10 to go get lunch yesterday. Well, that's because...
you expect it to be reciprocated back at some point.
Whether consciously or unconsciously, like, that's how our social rule kind of follows.
You expect something's going to come back to you at some point.
Yeah, and even if they never repay you, then your social standing is heightened because you're a good person, you know?
Because in that case, it would be seen as a donation.
You're
charitable at that point.
So we're going to get something out of it. It's self-interested at its roots, no matter what it is.
I guess with that said, how do you guys feel about Hobbes' self versus your idea of self? Like, do you agree with him or no?
I mean, I would say so. I don't like to agree with him, but he's pretty cynical. It's
an unfortunate agreement. If that isn't contradictory of itself, but I mean, this is philosophy, so I don't think that's out of line.
Yeah, there's no wrong answers, right?
I mean, it's unfortunately acceptable, especially in a college student's case, but I don't think it's not particularly heavy, though it could stand to be a little bit lighter in some spaces, but that's starting to leak a little bit more into the government side of his views rather than the philosophical self.
Right.
So
as far as like philosophical views, I think they're like very in line with what I really think, because like I think that even the way I look at it, I always look at it like if I do something, that I've always expect something back. Like there's just no way around it.
Right.
Like it doesn't have to be like a really negative way of looking at it, because in the end, we all want something back.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Yeah, we all want something to be reciprocated.
No one gives up anything to, like, not get anything back.
Like,
no one wants to do that.
It's not possible.
And I mean, I agree with Hobbes in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't really say I reject, like, the idea of a higher power, or there even being, like, this soul in a sense.
Yeah, like a sole ruler for everything.
Yeah, like, it's just interesting that, like, I like to exist in, like, the physical realm too, obviously, but then, like, I get so lost in thought sometimes that I just need to remember that, you know, Hobbes has a pretty good idea.
Yeah. I think the strengths of his whole self theory are stronger than the weaknesses, and I mean they're reasonable. But speaking of weaknesses, like we talked earlier, the moral basis is subjective, so that can be an issue. There's also no kind of end goal. Like we talked about Plato and whatnot. They're all like, hey, if we're perfect philosophers, our soul's going to go party with the gods. And the Buddhists are like, hey, if we do great, then we're going to poof out of existence and achieve nirvana. Like, that's great. But Hobbes really has no end goal. He never really mentions any purpose of life.
It just is what it is.
That's the cynical part of it, huh?
Yeah. I mean...
And that's just kind of part of how the cynicism is structured in a way, just because if you find yourself in that viewpoint, eventually speaking, no matter how long it takes, you're going to find yourself realizing rather that it's more so towards or life should be more geared towards the means rather than the end.
Yeah.
And enjoying what's in front of you rather than striving for some greater advancement.
As if you're going to come back and
that's a really good way of putting it. Like, you basically should enjoy life while you can.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to, at the end of life, just try and make something out of it. When it's too late.
Yeah. I guess if he's saying everything's in our own self-interest, what is that self-interest? Is that enjoyment or is that survival? I think probably at its roots it's survival, but in our social contract, we have that pretty much set for ourselves. So
yeah, I feel like it would be part of our culture, more enjoyment than it would be survival at this point, just because our culture
is probably
we don't have to fend for ourselves.
Yeah, we don't have to.
We don't have to hunt animals now. We can go to Winco and buy our meat. We don't have to kill stuff. So we're not really forced into that perspective. So it definitely falls within something that's more leisurely.
It's a more modern take on it.
Yeah. I guess to bring it back to the social contract, we see places where the social contract isn't intact. Like places in Africa where apartheid's happening and people and cartels are running amok in places. Those places have no social contract. Those people gave up, that don't have a freedom to give up, and they don't have that safety net of, when they walk out the door, they don't
know what's going to happen.
They're living in the state of nature.
So we can see that, philosophers like Plato have really great ideas with this end goal, but they don't exist in this real world where people are like these. Yeah,
they look at everything. They look at everything ideally, as far as real, as opposed to realistic.
Yeah.
I guess you could say the end goals are really culturally based, which would be a strength, actually, because Hobbes' philosophy can then apply to any culture. It just depends on what that culture's definition of success is,
Yeah, just the background of that country, whatever we're going to be talking about, just depending on their culture, it applies to them in a certain way, as opposed to how it would apply to us, as opposed to our culture.
And it was with Hobbes that related Catholicism greatly. As they said, it can change from religion to religion, so to speak. It's not mutually exclusive to just one.
Right.
But because it's more means based, and then it doesn't really have a sense of refinement, nor does it restrain itself or constrain itself to just one rather than the other.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that pretty much wraps up everything.
Thank
you guys for watching the podcast.
Yeah.
Thomas Hobbes in a nutshell. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.